Welcome to West Coast Grandma. So today I'm going to talk about sourdough starter. And although I'm not an expert, I have been dabbling in the world of sourdough now for a year and a half. And I've learned some kind of interesting things about sourdough starter. Going really to the basics is where I'm going to start. Of course, you have to get the sourdough starter. And there's lots of recipes online for making sourdough starter. Basically, it's wild yeast and lactic acid bacteria that attaches to the flour, and that's what starts to grow and forms your starter. Now, your starter also changes in the environment. So if you give somebody some of your starter over a year or so, it's going to change because it's going to take on the things that are floating in the air there. It's going to be things that are on the flour that they use. So anything really works. I started my sourdough starter from Kensington Sourdough Products in Ontario, and it was dehydrated. I got it for Christmas, and it's apparently a 150-year-old starter from San Francisco. I have been playing around with it for the last year and a half, and I figured out a couple of really good things. First of all, you're going to feed your starter. You need to use a scale. So if you don't have a scale when it comes to sourdough baking, you really need to get one. I've got a simple scale here that I got off Amazon. And all you're going to do is you're going to put your container on, which has a little bit of the sourdough starter in, tear it back to zero, and you're going to add your flour and water. It often says 50 grams of water, 50 grams of flour, but I find that's just not enough. I need a little bit more than that. So my ratio is 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. I have a little chopstick here that I use to mix it up with, and my sourdough sits until I'm ready to use it. So what do you do after you get your flour and water mixed in? Well, if I'm going to make sourdough bagels like I'm going to do today, I fed my starter this morning. Now take a look at that. Look at the bubbles in there. Okay, so what I did the other day though is I took half of my discard and then added to my what was left in the jar, and then I took the discard and added the flour and water again, and I put it in the fridge. And you can see it's not risen as high, but it still has all the bubbles. Now I find that when I've done my sourdough baking and I know that I'm probably not going to make anything for another, couple of days, I'm going to put it in the fridge. After it sits in the fridge for a while, it does get sometimes a little bit of like gray water on the top. I've always just stirred that back in. I've read that you can either pour it off or stir it back in, but if you pour it off, it gets thicker. So that's not necessarily a good thing either, because it gets too thick and gummy and sticky. So I like to stir that back in. And the other key to taking it out of the fridge, for example, if I decided now that I'm going to make sourdough bagels, say tomorrow night, I would now take my sourdough starter out of the fridge and let it warm up. And then I would pour off discard, feed it, let it sit for the whole evening, and I repeat that process tomorrow morning so that tomorrow night it's all ready. 1 or 2 feedings before you actually use it, I find that it's definitely better. Because of course, regular feedings make it much more stable. So that's for keeping it in the fridge. Then after I've made it, I feed it again and put it back in the fridge. Now this is going to go to my daughter tomorrow. She wants to start trying some sourdough recipes, so I'm going to take this for her. But it is all about the timing. So if you decided that you are going to bake, then you just have to take it out of the fridge and feed it, like I say, 1 or 2 times and get it kind of bubbly and warm. And it smells delicious. It doesn't smell off or anything like that. It smells a little bit sour, but not really. It's the organic acids that give it the sour smell and the sour flavor. But timing is everything. So this I fed this morning, and I'm going to make my bagels tonight that I mix up and bake tomorrow morning. So that works out perfect. One of the other questions is what kind of flour? Well, I just use my regular Rogers unbleached flour, but recently I have started using this unbleached white flour. It's organic white flour and it's from Nuka Rose Milling. So this is an organic white flour. I just kind of like to do that. It's a little pricey compared to buying it off a grocery shelf, but I feel a lot better about it. So you can also use a whole grain flour, you can use einkorn, you can use whichever flour. I have used the einkorn flour a couple of times, but again, it's expensive, and if you have to keep taking the discard off, unless you're really planning your meals and using it, I tend to end up dumping some of it in my compost, and that gets a little bit expensive. This organic unbleached flour is perfect. So that water doesn't have to be filtered water, just tap water. As long as you can drink it, it can go into your starter. So just a quick recap. When you're making sourdough starter, you have to use a scale to measure the ingredients when you feed it. That's really important. The flour, you can use whatever flour you'd like. Water, as long as you can drink it, is good for your starter. If you're not going to use the starter right away, put it in the fridge. And if you're going to bake something, bread or bagels or whatever, get it out of the fridge at least the day before and feed it once or twice before you use it. And if you have any questions at all, please ask, because a few things have come up in this last year and a half of using my sourdough starter, and I think most of them I've figured out now, so ask me. Hope you've enjoyed this. Happy baking. West Coast Grandma is signing out.